Hi guys, my name is Kristy Wolfe and I am a storytelling photographer. I'm located in Canmore, Alberta, and I have a company named Kristy Wolfe Photography. Right now in Alberta, schools are closed, which means that I'm at home with my kids. I have a son named Kane who's 7 and a son named Maverick who's 5, and we're testing out this homeschooling thing. But in order for me to keep my sanity, I'm also spending some time working on my photography. When Arts Place here in Canmore put out a call for content, I jumped on it. Recently, I had done a how-to night for the town of Banff, one of the free events that they were putting on for locals. And so that presentation is what you're seeing today, kind of tweaked so that you can do it online. And just before I get started, I do want to say I'm so grateful you guys are choosing to spend your time learning with me today. So thank you. When I look at this image, I'm thinking, who is this kid and what is he doing? Now, I know this kid. This is one of my kids, and he's my big emotion kid. So this is just part of our day. But it really makes me stop and think about what was happening at this particular time. I also really like this image because of the center composition, and your eyes are drawn in. You don't need to see Dad's head in order to understand what's happening. Now, before I get too far, I want you to think about what's your story? What brought you here? Why did you choose to learn more about visual storytelling? I also want you to remind you that since we're online, you can just pause at any point to take some additional time to think about things. My intentions here today is to tell you a little bit about who I am and how I use storytelling photography, but I want to show you how you can use storytelling photography and what you could focus on. This image of my son behind my enormous camera is a reminder for you to pause, to take a minute to think about what we have talked about, or to get up and make some images. I encourage you to hear what I'm offering, but also put it into practice. Your challenge is to make your own visual story. Maybe it's about your family, or your family pet, or the people you are living with. Maybe it's a snapshot of life during this uncertain time. Maybe you're just thinking about an object that's important to you and you want to tell that story. It could be anything. Take a minute, pause this if you would like to. What story do you want to tell? If I was thinking about my story, and my story would probably be a snapshot in time, I would head downstairs right now. I would stand back from where my boys are playing in our basement playroom, and I would take a picture of the scene. It's probably a mess, but they're not yelling right now, so things seem to be going well, and they've been doing a really great job of imaginative play. So I would try to get an image looking in on that scene. Now, I love seeing your images. I can be found on Instagram. It's right there on the page at kristy.wolf. And Instagram can take 10 image stories. So if you want to put together a story and then tag me in it, I would love to see it. All right, a little more about me. I'm a wife. I'm a mom of 2 boys, Kane and Maverick, that I mentioned previously, and Kane is a medical kiddo. I was a teacher, so I worked in the Calgary Board of Education, and then for the last 8 years I've been with the Edmonton Public School Board, most recently as a grade 1 teacher, and just this past September we moved to Canmore. But most importantly for this class is that I am a storytelling photographer. I want my images to tell a story, whether that's of student learning, a family in hospital, or my family in all of its beautiful chaos. It's important to me that my images document what real life is like. This image that you can see right now was taken this Christmas with an interval timer because I think it's really important for me as the photographer to be in the frame as well. So when I set up my camera with the interval timer or with the remote, I will take tons and tons of photos, and most of them are throwaways. But occasionally I get one that I'm like, yes, this is a keeper. Now, I got my start in photography when Kane was born. He was born 8 weeks early, and we ended up in the NICU. We ended up there for 2 months. I had taken a couple photography courses before that, but when we were there in the NICU, I found I was really taking a lot of photos of him, doing more reading about photography, and shortly after we came home, I started writing a blog just to keep family up to date with what was going on with us. The blog turned into a personal project where I was blogging every Friday, always about our family. And then I had other blogs on the go as well. But I basically was doing a Project 52. And this continued for 6 consecutive years. The great thing about posting each week was that it was hugely impacting my photography. It was keeping me accountable for picking up my camera even when things were really busy or when I wasn't feeling it, and it forced me to find new ways to tell our story. Now, I love using photography to tell stories. The stories I still tell the most often are stories about my own family. Sometimes I'll use a series of images like this. This is us. This was our family at our cabin one summer, and this series of photos is working together to tell a story. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see that it's setting the scene. It's introducing the characters within the environmental context. You can see the 4 kids at the table. You can see an adult in the background. It kind of starts to provide you with some information. If you go over to the top right-hand corner picture, it starts to narrow in. So we've got a bird's eye view of what one of the kids is doing. You can now see that it is showing you that he's coloring a superhero mask. And it includes some of the details like that red ninja character that was with Maverick all summer. Below him is another just detail shot of some of the characters. And so you can see my left-handed kid there. You can see his cousin who had broken his arm the week previously, just falling off a playground. And that also kind of gives some information about the story and their ages. And it's a snapshot of what life was like for us that summer. Moving into the bottom left-hand corner, there's framing to draw your eye into the main subject. So you can see the 2 boys in the foreground are kind of drawing you in to look at Mason with his little pencil grip that's all upside down. And then finally, on any kind of activity type session, I end up doing like a final product shot. So a discarded mask on the deck just tells you what this was all about. Now, sometimes all you need is a single image. Doesn't this show you what life is really like? I consider this to be an environmental portrait. Take a minute to think about what stands out for you in this image. Okay, now's your turn. How will you tell your story? You might just pause the video and think about what kind of shot you can use to introduce a character. You might be thinking about a selfie or an image of someone else or an image of a group of people. Normally, I would say feel free to use me if we were in a session together, but unfortunately, that is not the case today, though I would love to meet you. So you might actually just write down some ideas or think about some ideas, or you might stop and actually go and do this right now. Getting a character shot, introducing your characters. One of the ways that I like to use photography is together with my son. Kane and I take cameras when we have medical appointments or when he has a surgery. And we use those cameras to talk about his perspective and my perspective. So I shoot most regularly with a Nikon D750, which he loves to try sometimes. And for him, I'll use something like an Instamax or a little point and shoot, just something simple that we can get the pictures off of quickly. I really like to see with this what's important to him, because looking through his eyes, I see so many different things that I would not have come across. For example, recently we were having an echocardiogram and he had a camera and he was taking pictures of the ceiling where there was like birds etched into the ceiling that I had never noticed prior to that. And so it just has been a conversation piece for us and drawn my attention to different things at the hospital that I was not aware of before. I mentioned that I have a blog, and it recently has turned into more of a website, but the blog is still really important to me. For the last 7 years, I've been blogging about our life, our family, my photography. Sometimes it's our hospital story. Sometimes it's other families' hospital story or other family sessions that I've worked on. Sometimes it's just me writing out my thoughts, because for me, photography and writing are a type of therapy. I would invite you to head over to Kristy Wolfe Photography and check out those blogs, specifically the ones that are titled Click with Kids. I have a photography newsletter called Click with Kids, and it's a monthly newsletter that goes out to educators and parents who would like to learn basic photography skills or just have a project to do with kids. You definitely don't need kids to do these projects. It just kind of gives you new ideas once a month. So, Click with Kids, head over there and check out some of that information. When I tell a visual story, I'm taking a ton of photos, but I'm usually aiming to end with about 5 to 10 images. I'm currently working with this family on a storytelling project called 21 Weeks with my photography mentor, Christina Nyborg, out of Ottawa. Um, this first image, so there's 5 images that you're going to see in the next few slides. This first one is just setting the scene, introducing you to the activity that's going to be happening. These next two are introducing us to the characters, the mom and the daughter. Clearly, they're going skating, and then just focusing in on the detail of tying the skates. Here's kind of the big picture. It's showing us that they're outside, they're not in a skating rink, they're out on the ice. You can see other skaters in the background, and it's just kind of providing more information about the scene. And finally, these are the photos I'm looking for, the moments. This is showing the playful relationship between these two. At this point, the skates are off. We've done some skating and we've given up on that. But just this is this type of thing that I look for as a parent when I'm in the photos. I want to see those moments that just make me smile. The rest of this presentation is going to be talking about some of the things that I focus on when I'm photographing a story. I'm digging deeper into storytelling with a photojournalist right now, but I also took a class at Arts Place in the fall called Photography and Storytelling with Stéphane Legault. It was a great way for me to kind of jump back in. Um, Assuming things kind of settle for April, I am teaching a class called Personal Photography Projects at Arts Place, so please look into that. And if things aren't settled, then maybe we can do this in the fall. But I love learning, and finding out how other people tell stories kind of keeps my passion alive for storytelling. I took a class called Documenting the Unapologetic Life with Felicia Chang, who's a Vancouver based photographer. She talked about 3 key elements. Light is required for any photo. Composition, thinking about how you're shooting. Are you shooting wide to include the environment? Where are you shooting from? And how does that make a difference in the narrative that you're telling? But the key for me is moment. What are the relationship dynamics between your characters or within the setting? The next couple slides are going to be based on Kirsten Lewis's work. She is the first documentary family photographer that I fell in love with, and she talks a lot about approaching a scene. Um, what do you find interesting about the scene, and whose point of view is being used? So take a minute and think about this image and those questions. What do you find interesting? Whose point of view? I always come back to the idea of it being a third party, like a parks officer, checking on what they're doing. Kirsten Lewis was a teacher before she was a photographer, and this really stuck with me. Using your experience to predict what will happen. We're always making predictions about what's going to be going on, and sometimes they're not right, and sometimes they are right, but you are probably making a prediction right now about what might happen with this dog, this new baby, and this big sister. Is this what you predicted? When I am trying to tell a story, I'm aiming for the action, but I'm also looking for reactions. My favorite images will often come after what I was expecting or predicting. So my suggestion is to keep shooting, to be curious about what might come next. I intentionally choose time to make photos. I really want to be present with my class or with my family, and I don't always want to be behind the camera. So my thinking is to make more pictures less often. Now, I have to give credit where credit's due. This was one of my students in Edmonton. I had a photography club at lunchtime who took this photo. This boy did not want to be in the photography club. His mom pushed him. He was a student with autism, but his images just told a totally different story than other kids. I tell visual stories for community organizations as well as businesses. This particular slideshow is from A Stony Christmas. It was a production put on at Arts Place. We were telling the story of what it looked like preparing for the production as well as the production itself. So it kind of goes a bit behind the scenes. I would love to share this with you, but I have no idea how to put the slideshow into the slideshow. So I'm going to send you to Vimeo. My name on there is Kristy Wolfe Photography, and find A Stony Christmas. There are also other slideshows from family sessions or from hospital sessions, so if you want to take a look at some of my other work, it's there as well. Here it is, my storytelling shot list. Now, this is adapted from a class I took, The Stories We Tell, with Coley James, who's a photographer out of Colorado. She had a 12-step family story shot list, but that was often too much for me to be thinking about. Full disclosure, I have this storytelling shot list in the back of my mind, but I'm also watching to see how the story unfolds. Now, here's the different steps that I kind of am looking for. First, setting the scene. And it doesn't always have to happen first, but within it, I want to make sure that the scene is obvious. I want to introduce the characters in this story. I want specific details that help to tell the story. I want portraits of each of the characters within the story, but most importantly, I'm looking for connections between my characters within their environment. Now, I've got a couple other things that I've got on the back burner. Sometimes the final product might be something I include. There's times where action shots are something that I'm thinking about, and trying to get the whole group in a shot. If I'm shooting a family, I'm going to be thinking about how can I get all members of the family within one frame without sitting them down and posing them. I will do that occasionally if people ask me to, but I much prefer getting everybody in an image without that posed quality. So again, I'm looking to set the scene, introduce the characters. I'm looking for specific details that move the story along. I'm aiming for portraits of each character. And most importantly for me, I'm looking for connections between my characters. How will you tell your story? I'm going to put my storytelling shot list back up in a second, but I want you to think back to the story that you were planning to tell. I want you to create a shot list. Your goal is to have 10 to 15 images. Each image should be able to stand alone or work together to tell a more complete story. I also want you to aim for visual variety, which means when you have this series of images, they're going to look different. It's not similar pictures. So, how will you tell your story? Just a reminder, think about setting your scene, introducing your characters, the specific details, portraits, connections between your characters, and you might include things like final product, action, or group. This is the perfect time to pause to think about your story. I mentioned that I have a newsletter called Click with Kids. Again, it's a monthly newsletter with photography projects for teachers and parents. I try out each of the projects with Mav and Kane, like the selfie project that we were doing above. And my goal with Click with Kids is for educators and parents to learn photography skills together with their kids. If you're interested, find me, find my blog. There's lots of ways to sign up or just contact me. And here's my information. You can find me at kristywolfephotography.ca or .com. I'm on Instagram at kristy.wolf or Facebook as Kristy Wolfe Photography. I also just started a YouTube channel about suddenly homeschooling because that was rather unexpected, so you can come find me there as well. Contact me if you want someone to run an idea by, if you want ideas about where to go next, if you want to find out what I'm up to. Photography fills my heart. I love talking about it. I am doing a lot of hospital work and I have a goal of making documentary family photography accessible to all medical, special needs, and palliative families. It's a work in progress, but I'd love for you to come check out what I'm doing. And just a reminder, be open and curious about what is happening before your eyes. How will you tell your story? Thank you for spending your time with me. Feel free to contact me, and I'm thinking about you.